my office.
Trinity, yes.
I'm seeing another day on the stop.
That's a really nice. But yeah, I'm just.
Carrie, they are getting them out there to they have it camping.
All right. Good day to you, dear friends. I hope everybody is doing well. There is no handout for today because we're building off of last week. I did not bring a printed copy of today's handout. Kitty does. Kitty, there was an introduction question. Could you read the introduction question? As in, like, say your name and...
Is it a civil name?
You're on mute, Kitty.
Oh, that's all.
All right, what was it?
Oh.
Kitty?
I don't know.
Oh, all right, well, never mind.
Oh, this one says describe your handwriting, but we've done that before.
Yeah, we did that one last week. No, if you grabbed the handout today, it's because it's old. And so I'm going to pull it up because I had a good question. I did send it an email. Come on now.
Were there any more of those handouts?
Right, there's a big bunch of them
But
right here.
apparently it's not this.
There's a big one, there's a big bunch right here.
Yeah, keep going, Josh, I'm fine.
We're good. We're good. I am almost there. Proud. Here we go. I don't lose that one. Leave that one.
Thank you, sir.
And this one's from last week. If you weren't here 2 weeks ago.
It's a sneak alarm and.
You know what? I'm just gonna make it up. All right, few housekeeping things, everybody. Housekeeping. Before we begin, a few housekeeping things. One, we have 2 more class sessions remaining. We will not meet next Sunday, and then we come back for 2 Sundays in a row. Okay. And our newly revised lineup is we come back on the 22nd. So we won't meet on the 15th, but we will meet on the 22nd. And Dr. David Brockman from Rice University is going to be with us. And he'll be a treat. I'm delighted. And he's bringing a dog. And I'm excited about that. I don't know what kind of dog. He just said, hey, is it okay if I bring my dog to class? Because if not, I have to stay in the hotel an extra night. I said, bring your dog. We're dog accessible people. Then we will conclude the class on the 29th. I think it's the 29th. With Dr. Azier, Dr. AZ. That's how you should pronounce it. He's the superintendent of Round Rock Independent School District and also the president of the Board of Trustees. They're going to be our final speakers of the class. And so with all that being said, that's what's coming up. Remember, and I'll be sure to email you all, we're not meeting next week, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Let's open in prayer. Gracious God, we give you thanks for the beauty of this day. We thank you that you have set aside time for us to be curious and to lead with wonder and to discern how it is that we can best serve your students, your children in our public education hallways in this state. I pray, God, that you would bless this time together and that what is learned here grows out of here. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Yes, ma'am, Karen.
Did you turn on the YouTube Go Live button?
I turned on the YouTube Go Live button. And did you have the introduction question?
It was the handwriting.
Right, yeah.
This week was the handwriting? I must not have changed it. Okay. Well, that's okay. Today's question is, I want you to say your name and your favorite location on the playground as a child. Favorite location on the playground, or you can say your favorite PE activity. One of the two. Okay. So, Josh Robinson, and my favorite activity in physical education was jump rope. I enjoyed the jump rope. There was an old fundraiser called Jump Rope for Heart. Anybody? And I thoroughly enjoyed that. So we're gonna go Michelle.
Okay.
And after Michelle, Kitty, and then back to Natalie, and then around.
All right. I'm Michelle Cooper, and mine was the monkey bars. I could actually do full flips without just your legs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't now though.
Have you tried?
I haven't tried that.
My name is Kitty, and in PE, the parallel bars.
There you go.
Okay.
Wow. My name's Natalie, and the jungle gym.
Mm.
Yeah, we could do Star Trek on the jungle gym. We could do, it's
I'm Ted Foot, and mine was also the monkey bars.
I'm Diane, and I like jump roping, and if there was a slide, this.
Nancy, and in junior high, I don't think they allow it anymore, but we had the trampoline.
Wow.
And there was a trampoline with students as spotters on the side of it. They have completely stopped that now. It goes back to the rock ages. We would do big, for our flips and. Cool. We did.
Kathy Roberts, first thing I thought of was the monkey bars, but then I remembered there's this round thing that you push around in a circle and.
Yeah. I tell you this. And then you get on it.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get sick. Not too often.
Get sick. I don't get sick because I get on and off.
Well, we'd sit on it.
I'm Carol, and I like to swing because I was good at pumping my back.
I'm Susan McGrayer, and I'm remembering tetherball.
Oh,
I want to change mine.
That was fun.
I'm
Yeah.
on the white side and I remember Foursquare.
Mhm.
I'm Ken. My favorite spot on the playground was the swings.
Mhm.
It was a swinger.
That's what they do at Hippie Hollow.
I'm Joe, and it was dodgeball.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I'm Karen, and I have to go with the swings also.
I'm Mary, and I like the swings too. Those are my favorite.
I'm Carla, and I'm with Kathy. I did the merry-go-round thing, and I like to push it super fast and make everybody else fly off.
That seems right.
It tracks.
It does.
I'm John, and we were so city bound, we didn't even have a playground. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Stickball. We used to play stickball for hours. We'd put the square against the wall and play. And I was trying to tell my granddaughter yesterday about stickball, and she had no concept of it.
Okay.
Stickball, if everybody knows what it is, you didn't have a bat, but we had a broomstick and a tennis ball. You put a square against the wall that made the strike zone, and we would play for hours.
Stephen Mendoza, the swing, but to add, we would see how far a person could jump off of the.
Oh, yeah.
Until somebody broke their legs.
Scared the teachers, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, friends, we are in part 2 with the Reverend Ted Foote. And for those of you who weren't with us last week, I have emailed out introductions the last 2 weeks with regard to his biography and the things about him. We are picking up where we left off. And I am delighted to see that he brought show and tell, because Presbyterians love books. And it's hard to lead a class without doing show and tell. And so with that, back to you, Tay.
Well, thank you, Josh, and thanks to each of you. Just to cover the house, does everybody have the bibliography for today?
No, I
It is.
read it.
All right, are there still, oh wait, no, I've got the spare.
Yeah, it's been full.
Okay, all right, so. Send them that way, and you know it because it's got the marker lot over the other stuff. And then last week, it had a staple in it, 2 weeks ago, it looked like this. So did everybody get a copy of 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
No.
No, that's all right, we got spares.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to catch up, like a TV episode of multi episodes would, this is the, handout from last week, and it is Appendix A of the public education book that I wrote at the end of a study 12 years ago, and I think that it illustrates in some ways what in the world the church or faith communities have dipping their toes into the waters of public education, and even getting in further than their toes, maybe up to their hips at least. So that's what this is about. We won't retrace that today, except to say that my model for getting into this as a clergy person, and the reason I have to bring all these friends they're greater experts than I am. So, I just needed Amazon to get them here. But the triple helix that's over on last week's model is how I sort of do what I do. So if you can find a fallacy there where you can discredit me and critique me, and I'll just quit, or amend. But we talk about history, we talk about science, in which is real life. History is like real life with humans, and the mystery of grace, which is our faith, identity and commitment. And so everything is in some ways touched by that. What Josh had told me before I came, that that a year or so ago, y'all had looked at the power worshipers. Well, that caused me to start to think, okay, has Ms. Stewart written anything else? Well, so the bibliography here is chronological. So it goes back as far as 2012, and she originally wrote The Good News Club, The Christian Rights Stealth Assault on America's Children. And I Googled it this week to find out that yes, there are still good news clubs. So here we are 14 years after she wrote this book, and that organization is still alive, according to the Google search. And what the Good News Clubs are is that they are clubs that independent and charter schools and public charter schools, that they ask them, can we come to your elementary school for an after school program? And in their after school program, which they, I'm sure, provide activities and refreshments and such, there is a substantial portion of that time that is in activities related to Bible study, and their Bible study is very hardline, conversion, evangelical, pressure type curriculum. And so what Catherine Stewart argues in the Good News Club is that this is the beginning of the efforts of the so-called religious right, or the neo-evangelical or fundamentalist folks. You can get too many adjectives and then the wrong adjectives finally in some ways, but this is a case to build a community angle on interpretation that brings religion into the schools that she thinks is the beginning of something really problematic. In 2013, your guest, is it 2 weeks? Is that what you said,
Yes.
John?
Yes.
In 2 weeks is Dr. David Brockman. I've not read all the way through this, but I've what I call inspection read it. And this is I wish I'd had this when I was writing this in a way. Fortunately, what he does here is what I was trying to do here, except he does it. He's got more formal education than I do. What he says in here, and he'll give y'all more food for thought, but this is a little bit of an advertisement for 2 weeks from now. He sets up two different streams of thought that he thinks are a part of the important debate that goes on in terms of education and faith. He talks about libertarian individualism. So that would be, what would that be, you think?
What'd you call it?
Libertarian individualism.
Everybody has right to do his own thing.
There we go. Okay.
I got mine, you got yours.
And so if we look at Rand Paul in a way, who is a libertarian sort of Republican, we see about as, to my knowledge, about as pure an example of this libertarian individualism, the causes that he will espouse, what he will critique, and why he will critique it. It is a part of our constitutional system. What Dr. Brockman pairs that off against is what he calls reform liberal relationism. And I would suggest that if we took the temperature of this room, that most of us come out of that tradition or have landed there as adults. It's this sort of thing right here that science and history and critical inquiry and critical thinking and creativity with literature and the arts, that all of this is part of a holistic education. I was not trying to be multicolored. I was trying to maintain a certain level of ink. But that's okay. This is how community gets made. And at the heart of these four corners is respect and dialogue and mutuality. You might could add something there or want to critique something out, but I think that this is a holistic chart that represents reform liberal relationism. And what he says is that in public education, I mean, that's now the dangerous territory, because I said what he says. He's going to be here in 2 weeks to put this in perspective correctly. But he says that these two have to always be held in tension. If our individuality takes over, then we're not going to pay attention to our relationalism and who we are as communities. And if we weigh in too heavily or sell ourselves into the relational, then what we will exercise against the individual is domination and suppression. So you got to watch both of those, and so they're neither one sort of liberal or conservative. They're especially. He says you've got to have both intention. He talks about the subtitle. What's the subtitle of his book? It's hilarious to me because the title is in bold and the subtitle is so faint I have to take my glasses off and read it. Individual Relationism in American Politics, the key word there is in the bold part is dialectical democracy. And so he says that when you hold these in tension, you're going to have a safe system and a positive system. It's going to be safe for individuals, and it's going to maintain protection for communities as well. Okay, enough on that. Y'all are going to get to this, but this book did not make the New York Times bestseller list but that's not because it's not incredibly valuable, I think. The next 2018, Jason Stanley wrote How Fascism Works, the Politics of Us and Them. And so he also then writes in 2024, what's that, 6 years later, Erasing History, How Fascists Rewrite the Past to Control the Future. And in the light of what we see, especially back in the old days, we would say the Pentagon Papers had redactions, but now we say what? The Epstein files have redactions. That's right. Yeah. So it's just I love the book cover here, which made it out before we began talking so much about the Epstein files. Then we have in between Catherine Stewart's second book, The Power Worshippers, Inside the Dangerous Rise of Religious Nationalism. So she's going to broaden her perspective from where she was just talking about this seed of religious nationalism with the evangelical perspective off into the quicksand, as far as I'm concerned, but the toxic quicksand. And then she's going to broaden that with the power worshippers inside the dangerous rise of religious nationalism. Here is the most interesting take and instructive for me of this whole set, except maybe for Dr. Brockman. I mean, not that the others, everything I've got here was helpful and enriching to me. What tribal does in Michael Morris's book from 2 years ago, how the cultural instincts that divide us can help bring us together. Mm-hmm. He's trying to lower the toxicity of us versus them. And the way he does it is with a sociological and a value and perspective analysis that says that there are 3 tribal codes. There's what he calls the peer code, and the way he describes that is if a subject comes up, if I were to say, what did you think about the most recent primary elections, Republican and Democrat in the state of Texas last Tuesday? There are some odds, he says, that people would look to who was going to talk first. And that's the peer code. You don't walk out on a limb without knowing where your friends are. The second one he says, and he says that is social. The second tribal signal that he says almost every group. Now he's talking about folks that live in a tropical jungle, in equatorial, wherever, as much as he's talking about people that live in the 5 boroughs of New York City. The second one is the hero tribal signal, which is aspirational. So you've got the peer, which is social. You've got the hero, which is aspirational. So your hero, I can remember my 11th grade American history teacher in high school. He'd stand out in the hallway on hall duty until the room about filled, and he saw on his clock And if we were chattering in the room, he'd reach his hand inside the door, still on hall duty, and he'd flick the light like he was at the theater, and it was time to go to seats. So then supposedly things would quiet down, and as he walked in, he would say, and he was 65 or so, which then seemed to me ancient, but now he just barely drawing a Social Security. I've been on it for a while. He would say, "Who is your hero today?" And that was his way of helping us to keep up with current events. Now, if you're a high school junior, he would get ridiculous answers too. And then he would say, "Tell the truth now, tell the truth now, tell the truth now." He didn't ever get on our case, but if you just said something ridiculous, he just was kind of going to shove it off to the side with his phrase, "Tell the truth now." But the hero it might be George Washington. It might be, if you had said, who's the singer?
Taylor Swift.
If you said Taylor Swift, that's when he might say, "Tell the truth now, tell the truth now," because he would want to hear. I don't know who would want to hear these days.
We're out of those.
Yeah, we may.
No, I mean, and it could be Lee Greenwood, whether you like it or not. It could be someone like Lee Greenwood.
Yes, it could. Yes.
Or as an example of the hero who sings something, Woody Guthrie would be another example.
Yes. It is. Yeah, the arts people are not excluded.
Yeah.
He just would, but actually Taylor Swift could be okay because she is a self-image value person. And yeah. So there's, pardon me for taking on Taylor Swift.
With that one.
Don't descend on me because I'm repentant.
I don't need any emails tomorrow, Ted.
Okay.
I'm doing good.
Okay, we got the peer tribal signal, which is social, the hero tribal signal that is aspirational, and the ancestor tribal signal that identifies with tradition. So what he wants to do is to say that these are common analytical elements for everyone. For the indigenous peoples that lived here. I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, "Oh, so in Central Texas, you're going to go back only as far as the Comanches." Well, why don't you go back as far as the Apaches? Because the Comanches ran the Apaches out. So we have these, everybody has got ancestors and ancestral traditions that are important. He says that if we could recognize not left and right, red and blue and purple, but if we can recognize that every human being operates according to some factors that have been with them as they grow up and as they grow and as they learn, we can find common ground. He concludes the book by saying, "I don't have blind faith that tribal intuitions will inevitably heal the earth and all our divisions." So what he's saying is those intuitions can be a place where we come safely to sense that we have common ground in spite of our differences, if we have a mutual respectful understanding. But I see lots of evidence that they can help. Our long pasts are actually resources for future flexibility. Our capacity to evolve new cultural codes in response to new environments is endlessly surprising. So he's a Darwinist in that way, and should be a source of hope even in the most difficult times. One thing is certain: we will not overcome the present challenges as individuals. Even as our earliest ancestors knew, we can thrive only together, he says, in tribes. Now, I want to argue that if you look down at the bottom on this page for today, that tribal instincts and tribalism factor, he wants to say tribal instincts are common to human beings, and I think he's right. But tribalism as a defensive wall that actually becomes offensive to drive others out is a huge factor that we have to contend with. So to straighten up just this, well, let me go. I'll go ahead and finish the bibliography. Jim Wallace is The False White Gospel. His subtitle is, and this is an interesting set, Rejecting Christian Nationalism, Reclaiming True Faith, and Refounding Democracy. Which is, I told y'all last week about, 2 weeks ago, did I say something about, I know a bunch of people weren't here. I mean, we're 3 times as large as we were then. But Jorge Laura Brown, did I do that song and dance? Okay. In the book that Alex Stormberg and I just recently wrote, Being Presbyterian in a Disvangelical America, we tell the story, we get over what the book does is in 5 chapters, it takes theological themes and talks about how grace is the primary operative element in all of our doing theology and understanding ourselves as human beings. In chapters 6, 7, and 8, it tells the story of mostly about the Presbyterian Church USA and its predecessor denominations, how we began to turn a corner on some things we didn't have right and began to turn a corner to where we think today we've got it a little more on target. So the reformed and ever being reformed becomes the thread in chapters 6, 7, and 8. Chapter 6 is about science and sexuality. Chapter 7 is about race and slavery, and chapter 8 is about Christian nationalism. One of the things that we discovered in writing chapter 8 is that in 1967, August the 4th, maybe some hot day in August, at Montreat, North Carolina, it was a global missions conference for the Southern Presbyterian Church, the PCUS. And the keynote speaker this night was Jorge Laura Brad, who was then, he was still employed at Austin Seminary. He was born in the northern Mexico state of Chihuahua, educated for his high school diploma at Pan American School. And he was born a Catholic, but became a Presbyterian after he went to the Pan American School. So he was admitted as a Catholic in Kingsville, Texas, became a Presbyterian, went to Austin College for his BA degree in the 50s. Then went to Austin Seminary for his, what they then called the BD, his Bachelor of Divinity degree, which is the same thing as a Master of Divinity today. And then was admitted to the PhD program at Princeton, went to Princeton, and he was there, I think, 2 years maybe. And he got a call from the National Presbyterian Church of Mexico to come and be the dean at their seminary in Mexico City. So he took that call. I guess maybe he had most of his classroom work on his PhD done. Went to Mexico City and got into trouble almost within months because he was too progressive for the leadership of the seminary. He first time he got called on the carpet, I think, was when he encouraged his students for cultural theology to attend the cinema. And in the mid-50s, that was just something that was off the table for consideration in the church in Mexico and the national church. So the water began to boil and he was about to be dismissed. And David Stitt, who was then the president at Austin Seminary, got on the phone with him and said, Jorge, you got to get out of there. And so I'm going to create a position here at the Seminary of Hispanic Ministries, and you need to come back to Austin. So he did. And that's the time that he was there in the mid-60s. And he goes out to Montreat to deliver this address on this August evening. And it's called Out of the Shackles of Nationalism into the World. What he argues is that the type of nationalism in which the United States was engaged, or anybody could be engaged in the 1967, we had civil rights unrest domestically at home, and we were starting our messing around with authoritarian regimes in Central America. And then we had this, as the current administration, I'm sure, would not want to have called it, this war going on, this non-war going on in Vietnam. And what Jorge Larbraud said to his audience that night is that he said a couple of things. He said, do we really think that working class and disenfranchised people in Central America don't look north and see that we're not credible to talk to them about anything about democracy because we really don't have a good handle on that at home? In fact, we try to crush democracy at home, and we fund the economic elites to crush democracy in Central America. And he said, if we're really going to have credibility as a global partner, we need to understand the aspirations of people like we say we understood and understand the aspirations of Tom Paine and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and Abraham Lincoln. He said, once we can affirm where out of which we were born and value that in the present, then we will be out of the shackles of nationalism and into the world with credibility. He said, really, you need a good kind of nationalism if that nationalism is democracy. I just think that the dude was so far ahead of his time, and he became friends while he was he left Austin and went to be work with the National Council of Churches of Christ, and his particular assignment was Central America. And he became the leading Protestant friend of Archbishop Oscar Romero, and went there, toured El Salvador with the Archbishop. And when the Archbishop was assassinated, he was the only Protestant invited to represent the United States. He was the only United States Protestant representative to the funeral. And he writes in his memoirs how, they were in the cathedral and the military surrounded the cathedral so that they could keep control of the crowd. And he was pretty convinced he was not going to get out of there alive. He did. But this is a guy who had his fingerprints all over different constituencies, taking the pulse of democratic and faith community aspects of our life. And he was just right here where you and I live today. What got me over on that? I can't remember. But
It was good.
But Matthew Brody's The Seven Mountains Mandate is a book just out this year, and it talks about all of the dynamics of Christian nationalism. And he really builds on the work of the power worshipers and takes it, was you right that 18, did we say? 19. So he takes this 6 years later and really builds on it, and it's very concise. He's got a lot in here about Charlie Kirk and the nuanced divisions in the Christian nationalist. You know, if it's as wide as the Mississippi River, there's still different elements that have fed that movement as we experience it today. And he's really careful about wanting to sort that out. But he basically says, if you grab a hot electric wire, it doesn't matter what part of that system it is, it's going to shock you. And so you need to really pay attention that there's not a uniformity in the Christian national movement. They got all these factions, but it's still the Christian nationalist movement. And that's hugely problematic. So I guess maybe the lesson of that is don't stereotype, but be cautionary straight down the line. If you want to be entertained while they are educated, then John Fugelsang's Separation of Church and Hate. The subtitle is A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalists, Fascists, and Flock Fleecing Fraud. And this is a fun read. So if you have to be depressed, you might as well. That's just my. So if you get to this last page, he actually quotes the Last Jedi movie. He says, "An aged Luke Skywalker says the Jedi don't own the Force." And he says it's almost a throwaway line, beautifully delivered by Mark Hamill, but it urgently speaks to the reality of toxic fundamentalism, a religion with many faces, all believing they own religion and faith itself. But religious authorities don't own God, they don't own Jesus, they don't own the Bible, they don't own America, and they don't own you. Ask your fundamentalist or Christian nationalist to read the Sermon on the Mount and then look at what their church fights for. Is their faith community working for the stuff Jesus talked about? Or is he just a mascot for a mean little club that preaches superiority over service? Finished Christianity doesn't seek dominance, but transformation. Jesus of the Bible is constantly telling you to go beyond your own religious rules. Did I hear that in the sermon this morning? And into a deeper kind of love. John Fugelsang was a Roman Catholic. He might even have gone to seminary at first. Yeah, I think he did. And because his wife was a woman religious and was a woman. His current wife was a woman religious or a nun. And so they were married, and he's a comedian and a broadcaster. And this this is just really a fun read.
Can I piggyback on that for a second, Ted? Just the idea of what he's saying. There is a liberation when we accept that whoever the they is, they don't own this. There's no ownership. Jesus Christ is the head of the church, full stop. And we're all invited to be a part of that. And in the last 2 weeks, and I really struggled with the sermon this week, there's been a lot of talk the last 2 weeks, about this week in particular, about the war and the attack in Iran being a part of the ushering in of Armageddon. And and my challenge with this that I've wrestled with, and I've decided not to go this direction in the sermon, which is how the Spirit works, is how hubristic do you have to be to believe? Hubristic.
Oh.
What must you be in order to think that one has any agency to usher in Armageddon and the return of Jesus through military attack, through military might? There's just a massive disconnection there. And yet the conclusion of the week was the still photo that we have of President 47 at the Resolute desk with all of these Christian nationalist pastors laying their hands on him, praying for him for this war in Iran, that it is truly God's work that is being lived out so that Christ may be hastened in return. And so while I chose not to write the sermon on that this week, that comes back to the separation of church and hate, that these are the images, the rhetoric that we've heard this week that that I think is delusional in the most definitive sense, not not pejorative, but delusional in the most definitive sense that that in some way these leaders, this church movement, the whatever, institution that is, some way owns the truth. When our Secretary of War is saying, this is God's might, this is God's will for the world. There is a saying that with the declarativeness of I speak with authority, we own what we're saying here. And that's certainly a punchy ending to the book, but also one that speaks such real truth as juxtaposed to the gospel. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
but-
And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not talking about public education quite enough. I know we did that at length last time, but I also know that this is part of y'all's topic, but this is why it is so dangerous. I received this is anecdotal, but it's also true. So it's not scientific, but see if I can find a message that I received.
I was hoping maybe it's an.
Okay, so a friend of mine sent me, he copied and pasted part of a note he received from a classmate that we both are close to, were close to, especially when we were in college. And this classmate, the third party, had written to my friend that sent this to me because he knew my friend that sent this to me, who's a member of a Progressive Baptist church in, well, it's not Baptist anymore, but it's Woodland Church in San Antonio. And so my friend is very involved in that church, and I don't know if he had posted, I don't know if he does Facebook. I don't know how this third person heard about Tim's fondness and allegiance to candidate James Tallarico. But the friend wrote to him and said, I know you have a good heart, very involved in your church, and are well-meaning. Take a breath. But you need to look at Tallarico's views on trans, abortion, salvation, and the virgin birth. I know we have some different views, but you should at least research his beliefs. We don't have a lot of good choices for politicians, and sometimes the ones we pick are the lesser of the two. Anyway, let's see if Tim, let's see. Okay, then he wrote, Tim, I don't know what Tim wrote to him, but then he wrote back again. This is the second one. I know where you are coming from in your support of Tallarico. He just has too many off-the-wall beliefs that I can't support. And then he repeats his politicians lesser of two evils. And I'm not here to advocate for James, but that juxtaposition of the binary decision that I've got the truth and a person who is of faith but has a different political implications for the way they live out their faith just is off the table as far as I'm concerned. That's the very thing that, of course, Michael Morris says is hugely problematic. Everybody's got a right to their position, and everybody's got to make decisions when they go in and make a punch or pull a lever in the voting box. But that kind of that's what leads to the Christian nationalism, that we've got the truth, you don't, y'all just need to go off in a corner and be quiet. And if you would leave the room, that'd even be better than just going to a corner.
Well, I read a doctoral dissertation once of this brilliant young Presbyterian pastor who talked about that the more polarized we get, right, the more towards the extremes that we get, the more dehumanizing we get. And it was me, in case you didn't know.
I figured out it was.
The idea is, and I think James would be the first to tell you is, well, and I've heard him say it, is religious extremism by any tribe is disingenuous to the gospel of Christ and what needs to be mindful of and avoided. And that's where
we would have never talked to that woman at the well.
Yeah, right.
If we needed to be separate.
Right. And that the more we fall into the trap of the us and them, the more that we end up getting into that demonization, the dehumanizing of the other, which is what we see with and it's possible on both sides, right?
Yes.
That you know, the they who aren't like us, who aren't a part of our tribe, they don't have these shared hero ancestral lineage that we embrace.
They got their own, but it's not shared. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then they're not one of us. They're not, almost as in they're not real humans. Please go ahead.
One of the things, so my last job in corporate America was the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion when those jobs still existed. I left in 24, but one of the things that we talked a lot about is it's hard to hate up close. And so all of our training was experiential. So when employees tell each other their experiences, their life experiences, you start to see, wow, I'm more like you than I'm not like you. And so, you know, we have to talk to each other. We have to know each other, or there's no hope. It's hard to hate up close. Once you know somebody's story, super hard to hate them. Right?
Yeah.
It's easy to demonize somebody on an email or a text, right?
That's right.
From
Yeah.
Facebook.
Depersonalized.
And, and once you demonize somebody, then you're not gonna talk to them.
That's right.
Because they're demons.
That's right.
But as John Donne would have told us from his English prison in the 1600s, if we demonize and depersonalize, we are the less.
Right. I had executives on the conservative side say, and these are friends of mine, I'm not going to go to your training. I'll quit instead. I'm not going to be indoctrinated. Right.
Indoctrinated.
I'm not. You're not going to convince me. I believe what I believe, and you're not going to change me. And I would say, no one's trying to change you. I'm trying to tell you how we expect you to behave when you have your company badge on. That's all I'm asking you to do. And
you're actually getting paid for that.
Yes, those same guys would end up heading women's groups because they would be shocked at the experience of women at my high-tech company. And it would change them. They would be like, what? They would get educated on how women were actually being treated on the ground. And so, you know, if I could get them there and they could hear the stories, it worked almost every time. Not every time, but almost
6% of the time,
it worked every
time. We got about 8 minutes left.
Okay. What do y'all want to do? What do y'all want to do with your time? So let me just get down to the bottom of this page and the public education policy, whether it's by way of Christian nationalism or not, we hope, has related factors which always are going to figure into creating and supporting through thought and value influences. And some of those factors have to do with tribalism. Some have to do with social factors, political factors, economic factors, ethnic factors, and religion factors. And I avoided the term religious factors because I think that the religious always is in play with human beings, but it's differences of religion that actually I think it's in this one, in the Matthew Bodie talks about the virulent, anti-Muslim perspective
Oh, yeah.
of the Seven Mountains, folks that, you gotta be into Jesus. And then he talks about how anti-Semitism, the end of the world. Well, we want the Jews, but really we want Jesus to be over the Jews. And so it's a kind of if we were looking for pink and blue of acid and alkaline, we're going to get something in between. It's just not going to be real clear because each group uses Jesus and the Jews a little bit differently. Well, Jesus always comes out on top, but how?
Well, there's a condescendingness aspect
Yes,
to it.
yes, yeah. They're not peers. They're useful.
They're a tool.
Too.
Massive.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I would say is in all of this, in the Reformed perspective, we want to talk about voco vocari in the Latin, our calling. And our calling in education, I think, includes these three major factors. Service to others and service in providing for literacy and high education, as we talked about 2 weeks ago. It is about stewardship of resources and of relationships, and it is about community. And you can say service is related to stewardship and stewardship to community. This is where our all of our assets, which are person assets and economic assets and facilities assets, etc., all of this comes into play to be the people that, with the problems that we have, the challenges that we have to figure our way through. And I think these three factors are always a part of our calling to be the people of God, but it has to do with service, stewardship, and community, as with our similarities and differences. Now, what do y'all want to do?
Get our spears and start getting out fighting.
What? Did what?
Get our spears and try to go fight and go, no.
Yeah.
Questions, Kathy?
Yes.
Can I talk about some free associations to them? I think about anthropology and religion. Now, a little background, in medical school, I took a leave of absence for a while, worked down at the monkey colony in San Antonio. And they had an anthropologist who studied the behavior of all of these monkeys, okay? So they were watching all the changes in hierarchies in the monkeys and when they would happen and how they would happen and why they would happen. So that's sort of fascinating. My personal observation of human behavior is that people are willing to be generous as long as they don't lose their status in the hierarchy. And that when they start to feel like they're going to lose their status in the hierarchy, the hackles go up, the resistance goes up, and it gets mean.
Yeah, like to your folks.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to facilitate change or openness, you have to walk this very fine line of watching body language with people. And of course, I was a psychiatrist for 41 years. So I'm used to that.
Josh and I moderate session meetings. We're used to that too.
But I think that pertains to this whole idea of Christian nationalism, because I think the people who are Christian nationalists are people who are afraid that they're going to lose their privilege.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any simple answers to it, but I'm always struggling to be aware of what's going on with that with people when I'm trying to talk to them. And I've got a very good friend I went to college with. I'll be at her house next weekend, actually. And we're on the same page about all this stuff. But she is agonizingly in pain about her brother and sister being so unable to even look at any other options about lots of stuff,
Yeah.
and they use religion as an excuse for being rigid.
Mhm.
And that's not what Jesus said. You know, the fascinating thing about Jesus to me is that Jesus cut through all the crap and he looked at what motivated people. He looked at what was important to people and he always spoke about it. In fact, to be a little bit heretical, I don't think Jesus ever told us to worship him. I think he told us to be like him.
Exactly.
Whatever that's.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate it. Let's, thank you. What other questions we have for Ted before we have to close up? Or comments or feedback from last time or this time? What's stirring in your head?
I'm kind of curious about the seminary and how is the seminary in particular is addressing some of this stuff, or is it just interwoven in all the curriculum, or is there any particular initiative or class or anything? It's
Well, there's a DMin track in the Doctor of Ministry program on public theology. And
Okay,
that doesn't mean that all of this is part of that. What the seminary has to do is they have to water a garden and cultivate a garden
yeah,
where students, but non-binary thinking, where we're all, where we're divided up this side against that side, is never, it's always challenged if students come with that. There's a lot of work done foundationally from the biblical and the theological traditions to see where we come out. It's probably part of the church's ministry division and some of the theology and the ethics classes to be exploring this. But the short answer is
it's interwoven.
yes, but we're always looking at what we can do better, I think. And I'm only a 3-year appointment. I'm 2 years in, almost 2 years into a 3-year appointment. So I'm gonna be fading off into the eastern sky line, not in the sky, but going back to Brian at some point too. But I just think that all of y'all, as I said 2 weeks ago, y'all are the theologians that matter as much as anybody. Nobody matters more than you do. And so to be cognizant of that and pursuing that is huge. And I just give thanks that y'all are here and Josh has convened this group or whoever has, and I think it's great.
I went to the midwinter lecture series at Austin Seminary and they had 3 lecturers. One was about taking care of Earth, the theology of Earth and Mother Earth. And she was so smart that I had to look up words she was saying. While she was talking, I was like, what? The second one was a gay ex-evangelist who has written a book about Job and talked about speaking to God and suffering and as part of the human experience. He was awesome. And the other was Hispanic, and he was talking about caring for community and what Jesus has asked us to do with neighbors. So it definitely felt
Right.
like they're trying to change the narrative around, what does being religious mean? So one guy was about action on each other. One guy was about talking to God about how you're suffering. And the lady was about, let's take care of Earth. So I don't think that they purposely wove those in, but it definitely felt like, okay, there's definitely a theme here.
It was as good of a blended
It was so
threesome
good.
I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back they hit the hollow, blended threesome.
Yes. Wow.
Nice. Very nice.
Ted, I'm gonna
Suck up.
let you have the final word, and after you read what you're about to read, if you'd also close us in prayer. But I want to answer your question, and there's 2 things I want to say by way. You mentioned about the doctoral program. There's a track now called Public Witness, and it does do a little bit more deep dive in that, and how it is that we practice our ordination as ministers of word and sacrament in our day and age and proclaim the gospel news publicly, trying to bring back some, take back some of the oxygen that's been stolen in the room. I think watering the garden for the Master of Divinity students is good, and there is exposure definitely throughout the curriculum of the 3 years of that as well. But most of those students are coming into seminary now. They're just necessarily, they have to engage that line of thinking along with the other academic studies. Not all seminaries will go that route. My seminary, Louisville Presbyterian, was across the street from the Southern Baptist Seminary, called Southern Seminary, and our curriculum was not aligned in that regard. So, but I also think that's probably a bit more colleges that are engaging that now than when any of us were in college.
And they're under pressure too.
They're under pressure to stop talking about it, but that's another class. The other thing I'll say, and I'll finish with this, is people in the Presbyterian Church, we have a two-part constitution. The first part of our constitution is called the Book of Confessions. The second part is the Book of Order, how we govern ourselves. The confessions are the theological foundations that we build upon for everything else, that speak to a truth to the time in which they were written. Just this past week, for the last 2 years, our denomination has been writing a new confession. And just this past week, the text of that confession has been made public. And there are some people among us who are so dorky, who've been waiting with bated breath to read that, and spent 3 hours reading it this week, and studying it and critiquing all of the writings. And it's really kind of the first confession that will address some of the idea of the idolatry of power and the pursuit of greed in our current context. So that, should it get adopted by our denomination, that then becomes something to which we must embrace and confess as well. That it will give some shape to who we are theologically. The whole thing isn't about that, but it is definitely a portion of it. And I think that will give some theological shape to congregations, to Presbyterians, to our Presbyterian colleges, Presbyterian seminaries, and how we live into it and how we incorporate that into our liturgy on Sundays. So that's all I got to say about that. As a reminder, we're not meeting next week. We're back in 2 weeks. You get the final word. Read to us.
Let the final word be from, some of you may remember Eric Severide. Eric Severide was born in 1912, and he wrote, he was a correspondent in World War II in Southeast Asia, or the Asian subcontinent, and wrote this book called Not So Wild a Dream, which was his memoir. Was 12 from 46. He was 34 years old when he wrote his first memoir. I mean, I barely was learning where the toilet paper was when I was kind of good. But then this was republished in 1976. And I can remember saying to some youth group member or youth leader when I was on my intern year in First Presbyterian Church in Pasadena, Texas in 1977, 78. And I said, man, I'd like to have that book because I like to listen to that guy talk on TV. And when I left in August of 78, the youth group gave me this book, and they wrote in it. And all those people now are, oh yeah, they're grown-ups. But here, so the epigram in the front of the book that was in 1946, Severide chose to put in here an epigram from a poem. I think it's a poem, On a Note of Triumph by Norman Corwin. Well, later on, Norman Corwin, of course, would be blacklisted in the McCarthy era, because he was considered to be a leftist. But the line that Severide puts is post, as a verb, post proofs that brotherhood and sisterhood is not so wild a dream as those who profit by postponing it pretend. Our common humanity may be a wild dream, but we need to work against anyone who would tell us that it's an unachievable dream. And So he concludes, Severide concludes his new introduction to the 76th book with this paragraph. In the year I was born in a Dakota village, which was 1912, Professor Gilbert Murray at Columbia was writing of Greece and its fate when it lost its nerve. That is, when it lost its faith in reason. He said, as far as, quote, as far as knowledge and conscious reason will go, we should follow resolutely their austere guidance. When they reach their limits, as they do, then we must use as best we can those fainter powers of apprehension and surmise and sensitiveness by which, after all, most high truth has been reached, as well as most high art and poetry. Careful always to seek for truth and not for our own emotional satisfaction. Careful not to neglect the real needs of men and women through basing our life on dreams. And remembering above all to walk gently in a world where the lights are dim and the very stars wander. And I think that that's why we're even involved in an enterprise of public education, is to help a future generation grow in respect and dialogue and mutuality as they are lifelong learners for all the gifts that God has given us. And so let us pray. Oh God, your gifts are too many to number. Grant us a deeper appreciation each day for the mysteries, including the relationships and the sciences that are part of those mysteries. And grant that we might grow in our service of you and among your people in all the ways that your word and spirit eternally guide us. For it is in your holy name that we pray and we say together, amen.
Thank you, Doctor. Goodbye, kid.
Sorry for the link. Thank you all very much.